So the massive fire that nearly destroyed Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral is now out, but the rebuilding process is just getting underway.
Fortunately, there have been prayers and offers of help pouring in from all over the world. Our foreign correspondent Seth Doane reports from the heart of Paris.
As vicious flames engulfed the 850-year-old masterpiece of Gothic architecture, France's president said a part of us is burning.
I saw a lot of people crying on the streets, and it's all because it's the symbol of France, it's the symbol of generations.
The fire broke out in the attic around 6:50 local time, about 5 minutes after Notre Dame closed for the day. It spread to the roof at the rear of the cathedral. In less than an hour, flames spread to its giant spire, which just 13 minutes later collapsed. 400 firefighters battled, but at times appeared dwarfed by the fire, which tore through the soaring structure, fueled by the wood of 1,300 oak trees that made up part of an interior network of wooden beams. Dropping heavy water from the air was not an option for fear it had caused the entire structure to collapse. 2/3 of the roof was ravaged. But medieval stonemasons may have saved Notre Dame by doing such a good job on the buttresses that survived the fire. There was a rush to save artwork and artifacts. Paris's mayor said the Holy Crown of Thorns and other precious pieces had been successfully recovered. Today we're getting our first look inside, where the cross on the altar appears to shine amid the devastation. Stone saints look toward firefighters, and some pews survived. Attention is now turned to the stained glass windows and the organ, one of the oldest in the world. Notre Dame had become one of the most popular sites in Paris, attracting about 30,000 visitors a day, around 13 million a year. During the fire, onlookers crowded onto bridges and streets, watching in horror. Powerless, some prayed or broke into song. The French president was defiant. The worst has been avoided, he said, adding, "We will rebuild."
So Seth Doane is joining us now from Paris. Seth, I've had the pleasure of visiting Notre Dame twice, but I think that even if you've never been there, you know it. You know the outline of the structure. When you think of Paris, it's one of the few places that comes to mind. I know what I felt like watching the flames rip through this building, but what is it like in Paris right now?
There is this sort of stunned silence, Anne-Marie. If you were to see up and down the bridge that I'm standing on right now, there are all sorts of people just kind of standing, looking, some taking pictures, some looking toward Notre Dame, just thinking. We were talking earlier with some families who came from the U.S., some with small kids who were saying, we have seen a moment in history. We thought it was important to bring our kids here to show them this, to try to take it in, to try to understand what's happened. But a kind of stunned silence, a somber moment. People are still kind of coming to grips with this. As you say, this is one of those monuments, this church, this cathedral that you just walk past when you come to Paris. It is a destination, certainly for tourists at busy periods like this in this Holy Week. I heard you and David talking leading into that piece. On an average day, there are about 30,000 people who can come to Notre Dame. On these religious holidays, you can get 50,000 people coming.
Seth, I got the chills last night when I watched the flicker of the emergency lights as they kind of beamed off the cross. It was just goosebump inducing to look at that. So many people have asked us, what's the cause? Do we know yet? Is there a preliminary cause?
We hear from the Paris prosecutor this morning that they believe they're working under the assumption that this was an accident. They don't see any reason to see a foul play, but they add that 50 people are continuing to work on this investigation. It is a very big site. We are also getting some word that the fire itself was found around 6:50 p.m. last night, but there was also another alarm about 20 minutes earlier that went off, but no fire was found at that time. It wasn't found till about 20 minutes later. So still, they'll be pouring through the records of when these calls came in, where they looked, and as you saw in that graphic in the piece there, they are now saying that the fire started in the attic and then just spread so quickly. You've seen this structure. It is giant, and there were those wooden beams, 1,300 oak trees making up that web of internal beams that would have just burned very quickly. We're looking 1,300 oak trees is enough wood to fill about 50 acres of forest.
Wow.
You know, you mentioned the fire happening in sort of the early evening. I know how crowded that area gets at that time. And then I can't help but to think, you know, the street right in front of Notre Dame is pretty wide, but then it's kind of like a medieval section of the city. So these tiny little streets. And I thought, how do you get a fire truck through that? What are some of the challenges that the firefighters faced?
Absolutely. Well, this is an old city certainly with narrow roads, as you point out. In this area, the firefighters were also dealing just with that huge space and inside an antiquated system to try to deal with the fire, and just so much wood. One other issue is they just couldn't drop water from helicopters, as some might imagine, because they were concerned that water, which is so heavy when dropped in that volume, could just collapse the entire structure.
Seth, I wonder if there'll be Easter Mass outside the cathedral, near the cathedral, you know?
I think that's a great idea.
You know, I just wonder, have you heard anything?
I wonder the same thing, David. Of course, you know, I'm based near the Vatican. I assume we've already heard the Pope extend his best wishes and his sorrows here. I think certainly we will see some remembrance. Where exactly that will be. Right now, it's actually very hard to get to the site itself because it's all cordoned off by police, by emergency workers. You still see hoses going across the bridges, and people all around really just trying to take pictures, trying to reflect, talking to each other, and sometimes just sitting kind of in silence. But also, I'm sure you were watching last night as people just started to kind of sing hymns, drop to their knees and pray in the streets here. And we've certainly heard Parisians say that in some ways this tragedy, as so often the case in a tragedy, can bring people closer together.
Yeah, definitely. We've certainly seen that already. Seth, thank you so much.